Now, sadly, we've known who Donald Trump is for some time now. We knew he was a corrupt businessman who cheated people. We knew that he and his campaign invited foreign adversaries to tamper with our elections. And now we know that in the course of his duties as president, he's endangered us all by putting his personal and political interests ahead of the interests of the American people. But this is ultimately about much more than Donald Trump. It is about us. It is about who we are as a nation. History is being written, and the world and our children are watching. So women have been in the forefront. We saw that again just this past week with Greta Thunberg, who first captured international attention when at 15 years old, she began demonstrating outside the Swedish parliament to protest her government's inaction on climate change. At first, she said, I tried to bring people along to join me, but no one was really interested, so I had to do it by myself. Soon, though, students across Europe and then the world started following suit, first just by the dozens, then hundreds, then millions. And this week, she delivered a powerful speech at the United Nations Climate Action Summit that should be required viewing for every lawmaker. She spoke for so many in her own generation when she condemned world leaders' lack of urgency in responding to climate change by saying, "You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words." Now, I know she engendered a backlash from the climate change deniers, from the anti-anything coalition that takes on those who stand up and speak out and actually live in an evidence-based world instead of a fact-free world. So she did engender this backlash, which only made her message more significant, more important for every one of us to pay attention to. And I personally am grateful to her and what she is inspiring among young people across the world. Because never underestimate the power of women and girls, not only to improve their own lives, but to lift up families, communities, and entire nations. And the women we recognize today embody that truth. Michelle Bachelet is someone I have known and admired for a long time. In fact, my daughter Chelsea and I wrote about her and about Greta in the book of Gutsy Women, which comes out next week, as a reminder of all the obstacles that women in the past and the present have had to overcome to make change, to take a stand, to be who they authentically intended to be. And Michelle has championed women's rights, opportunities, and full participation throughout her career. She passed sweeping policies to expand access to maternity care, to require banks to disaggregate data by gender. And after escaping a brutal dictatorship herself, she has spoken out as the High Commissioner against human rights abuses from Myanmar to Syria to the United States border. And I have to recognize in the audience a prior High Commissioner on Human Rights, former President of Ireland, Mary Robinson, and we're so pleased that she is here. You know that great old saying, if you want a job done, ask a busy woman. Well, we've got some perfect examples of that. Now, along with High Commissioner Bachelet, we're honoring Rosa Anaya. Rosa is pioneering restorative justice in El Salvador's prison system, one of the most violent places, unfortunately, on our planet. She's working to prepare inmates to become responsible employees, engaged citizens, and promoters of peace in their own communities. Virginia Marta Velásquez is providing essential services to women and survivors of violence in Colonia, Honduras, one of the most dangerous cities in the world. Now, for High Commissioner Bachelet, for Rosa, for Virginia, human rights are personal, and they should be for the rest of us too. Advancing the rights and opportunities of women and girls is the great unfinished business of the 21st century, but it's also important to take a broad view of what's happening in the effort to continue to promote human rights worldwide. Consider the recent report from the Defense Department's Inspector General on conditions at the Al-Hol refugee camp in Syria, where tens of thousands of women and children are being held in horrible conditions. And lack of proper security has resulted in the spread of ISIS ideology by the women in the camp. We know that women play critical roles in violent extremism, both as perpetrators and as victims. And we also know that women are often in a prime position to root out early signs of radicalization, because women's rights and physical safety are often the first targets of fundamentalists. Yet too often, our United States and our global counterterrorism strategies fail to enlist women to combat this radicalism. Now, over the years, the Georgetown Institute has helped build a compelling evidence-based case to support the fact that when women participate in peacemaking and peacekeeping, we are all safer and more secure. And when women are actually included in peace negotiations, agreements are less likely to fail, more likely to last. And when women's vital interests and insights are ignored, we lose out on half of the talent of the population. Now, there's a lesson here for all leaders, even in our own country, to consider. That includes ensuring that women are included and women's rights are respected as part of any peace negotiations in Afghanistan. I think this is a moment when we should be doubling down on our commitment to women's rights and human rights around the world and here at home. However, our own government is turning its back on refugees, people seeking asylum, ripping children away from parents and family members, and waging an all-out concerted assault on women's health and rights. And when it comes to American leadership on the global stage, we're not only seeing it missing in action, we're seeing a very troubling shift from this administration, which has created something it calls the Commission on Unalienable Rights. Now, this Orwellian-named commission has promised to undertake one of the most profound examinations of human rights since the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. Based on what we have seen already, we have every reason to believe that this so-called re-examination will be a reversal of commitments to women's rights, LGBTQ rights, and reproductive rights. Just think back to 1948. We had 48 nations at that time who came together representing the vast majority of the world's population. More than 70 years ago, to vote in favor of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which affirmed for the very first time in human history that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity, that human rights are not granted by any government, they are the birthright of every man, woman, and child. Since then, the Declaration has been the most widely translated document in the history of the world. Generations of activists, leaders, ordinary citizens have struggled and worked to carry its principles forward. They have fought and organized, campaigned, sometimes losing their own lives, to ensure that people could experience the full measure of freedom, of dignity, and the benefits of citizenship. We have seen built an international system of laws and institutions to protect the freedoms spelled out in the Declaration and to hold violators accountable. We've seen woven into domestic constitutions the idea of human rights from the Declaration, and then been able to make them a crucial test of a government's legitimacy. And we've also learned along the way that respecting and defending human rights makes nations more stable and secure. Now, Eleanor Roosevelt, who did so much to champion the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, knew it was only the first step. From her deathbed, she continued to call out a message to future generations. Staying aloof is not a solution, it is cowardly evasion. She also posed a question that I want all of us to constantly ponder. Where, after all, do human rights begin? In the small places close to home, so close and so small that they cannot be seen on any map of the world. The places here on this campus, in your workplaces, in your communities, where everywhere that men, women, and children seek equal justice, equal opportunity, equal dignity without discrimination, unless those rights have meaning in these small and close places, they will have little meaning anywhere else. Without concerted citizen action to uphold them close to home, we will look for vain. We will look in vain for progress in the larger world. I think about Eleanor Roosevelt a lot. I think about her crowning achievement, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, because I often need to be reminded that this is a moment to hold on to the courage of our convictions. It's not easy. In fact, it can be downright difficult and discouraging. But keep in mind not only Eleanor Roosevelt, not only Greta Thunberg, who kept persevering throughout whatever criticism and backlash she experienced, but keep in mind the women that we honor today. We cannot afford to be aloof. We cannot afford to be cowardly. We have to stand together and continue to speak out for the rights, opportunities, and dignity of women, men, and children. Thank you all very much.